Coerced adoption, a form of child trafficking, is now emerging as a major point of public examination of the Unification Church, specifically in Japan. And it appears to be a point that could be pivotal in a lawsuit that's being brought against the Unification Church in Japan. I'm going to try to explain everything I know about the practice in as little time as possible. Here goes. First of all, this practice is widespread, it is commonplace, and it is foundational to the doctrine of the Unification Church. And here's where the doctrine comes into play. The Unification Church teaches that the sole purpose of its members is to create a so-called pure blood lineage of children and grandchildren who have been blessed by Reverend Moon. In other words, their blood lineage has been cleansed by Reverend Moon's marriage blessing. And the only way for people to really experience God's heart and to go and join him in heaven is to have a so-called blessed family. And what that means is the highest ideal of the Unification Church is for a family to get married by Moon, get blessed by him, and have children that are free of so-called original sin. And by living in this so-called blessed family with these kids, the parents will then have experienced a higher form of God's love and will go to a better place in the spirit world when they die. Now, here's the problem. If you, for some reason, are a couple that is infertile in the Unification Church, and you can't have these second-generation kids, you got a problem. You can't experience all that love from God. You can't go and be with him in heaven unless you experience the love of a so-called blessed family. And the only kids that will suffice to be a part of your family are kids of parents who were blessed by Moon, kids who have this so-called pure blood lineage. So what this means is it creates demand within the Unification Church for baby trading. It creates an underground black market for families who can't have kids for whatever reason to ask their church elders if they could maybe find a family who'd be willing to give up a kid, or maybe ask other families if they'd be willing to give up a kid. And it creates a dynamic within the church where people who give up their children as so-called offering children to couples who cannot have kids, these people are revered and they are in many cases rewarded, sometimes financially. This is a common practice. It happens globally. I witnessed this myself in both the U.S. and the United Kingdom. It's evident that it's happened in Japan, and I'm quite certain it's probably happening in most other countries that the Unification Church operates in. So that's part number one. This is widespread, and it's part of the theology, and it's commonplace. Number two, let's talk about the legality of this practice in various jurisdictions. My understanding is that the U.S. is laissez-faire about this, and in theory, if parents want to swap kids, no one's really stopping them. My understanding that here in the UK where I live now is that that is not the case, and it is actually illegal, and it has been done illegally in this country in many cases. And I know of one case in particular where a couple wanted to give up their child for adoption, and the grandfather of the kid, who wasn't a church member, called the police on the parents and explained to the police that the parents were about to give this kid up for adoption. And the police got the court involved, and the court said, you can't do that. So they quashed that one. But it has still happened in this country. And in particular, I know of one case in this country where it happened after the kid was born. A church leader who had daughters of his own, but had not yet had a son and really wanted a son. This church leader, this is in the 1980s, maybe 90s in this country, in the UK. This church leader saw a newborn baby that had been born to a church family and told the parents that God told him it was the parents' duty to give their child up to him. And these parents believed the doctrine that I've just explained on this video and that we dive into on my podcast, and they gave their kid up at a few months old. And that kid had siblings, and those siblings remembered the day that their parents told them that their brother was no longer going to be their brother and was going to go live with another family. That family incidentally moved away from the UK across the world. These are the things that happened. To give you a sense of the scale here, I know of one family in the US. The parents had 6 kids total, and they gave away 3 of them. Half of their kids were given away, and that family was given some money by the organization. I think it was $1,000 was given to them as a prize for giving away their kids. I also have testimony on my show of multiple pregnant women being brought on stage at a church event in front of hundreds of people and being asked on the spot if they would give their kids up for adoption. They were under enormous pressure. There are so many cult-like dynamics at play, and many of the women did say, yes, I will give up my son or daughter for adoption. And that happened. This is a very widespread practice, this institutionalized baby trafficking. I hope this gives you some idea of the scale and the scope that this operates on, and I hope that this helps to contribute to the knowledge of the people in Japan who are working to fight against this legally. And if you have any questions, contact me or listen to my show. Peace.